your jobs are probably going to go, all right? There's a good chance your jobs are going to go. It's those people who understand how to use it and how you can apply it are going to be the ones that inherit the future. The chairman will be scared of what's going to happen with AI. Yeah. You could be the people going, I'll tell you, and I'll keep you informed.
Badyeri Kamaru, which in Gadigal language means hello and welcome. I'm here today. My name is Natasha Cormier. I'm from News Australia, and I'm going to be delivering the Acknowledgement of Country. Let's begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we all stand today. For me, it's Gadigal land, home of the Gadigal and Wongal ancestors of the Eora Nation. I have lived on this place for most of my life. It has shown me everything. It's watched me grow. It's watched my child grow. It is my true home. Let us all pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past and present, and honour thousands of years of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history, cultures, knowledge and traditions of storytelling. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here with us today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Good evening. I don't really need a microphone. I don't know why they gave me a microphone, but I'm going to use one. My name is Terry Savage and I'm chairperson of the Marketing Academy, and welcome to Food for Thought, which is very hard to say if you've got a lisp. This is the first in a series between News Australia through the Growth Distillery and the Marketing Academy. We think that Food for Thought is going to be provocative, it's going to challenge, it's meant to actually make us think beyond the thinking we normally do on a day-to-day basis. And I have no doubt that through the series, as it evolves, it's going to become a place where people will want to be invited to the biggest table in Australia and listen to some of the speakers that will be forthcoming. What we're going to do is, obviously, as the Marketing Academy, we hold a similar range of values to the sort of things that are happening here. We're about developing future leadership, and the sort of challenge we're going to hear from the speakers and the speaker today is about the future leadership aspirations and how to manage those positions. Having said that, I now have one other duty, and that's to introduce Leigh Lavery to tell you about what lies ahead this evening. So, Leigh.
Thanks very much. I think I'm mic'd up. I think I always had the career ambition to be at the big table. I didn't realise it was going to come so fast, so this is great. Look, it's a complete honour to be here today and welcome you all. As mentioned, I'm Leigh Lavery. I'm the General Manager of the Growth Distillery. This is fantastic because this is our first Food for Thought. It's an exclusive event. We're going to run a series. As Terry mentioned, the plan is that we want to tackle the issues and the topics that we think will matter most to CMOs in 2026. We know that the world's changing really fast and we know that it's incredibly dynamic. And so what we want to try and do is set an agenda where it's something that when you come along, you can enjoy, you can explore. Hopefully you go away with something different and it enriches whatever that tomorrow looks like for you and your teams. Today, we're extremely lucky to have a very special guest. You can come out now if you like, Sir John. He's hiding. We're playing hide and go seek.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, no.
We've got an absolute icon of the advertising industry. This is a man whose career has transcended 6 decades, and he's worked on some of the biggest and most loved brands that we've known in the Western world, and some of the biggest campaigns, and probably won more awards than a LinkedIn profile can do justice. He's also been the founder of some of the biggest agencies that we've also known, from Saatchi & Saatchi through to Bartle, Bogle and Hegarty. He puts the H in BBH. I just wanted to say that. And some of the biggest brands, Audi, Levi, and Johnny Walker. I think I'm probably mid-40s. I think there's a generation of men that wear boxers under their jeans because of Sir John. He's also... I've taken him off tonight, but...
Yeah. What, now?
I'm wearing undies, but yeah, okay. We've really gone low early.
Oh, God. Oh, well. Thank God it's only half an hour.
That's right. So John is basically the personification of why creativity matters to business. And as we know, the business of creativity is a project that's well underway and quite quickly becoming an established part of our world as well. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sir John Hegarty.
Lee, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't expect to be revealing my underwear so close
So
tonight.
yeah, I know. Well, I did lead you on, didn't I?
Yeah, that's okay. Look, my first question I can call you.
John,
just call
please,
you John?
yeah.
Okay. I did have to rehearse
My
that.
wife does,
Yeah, okay.
if I'm
Well,
lucky.
We're that close already.
Yeah.
Great. Now, I've listened to a number of podcasts you've been on. I've read a number of posts and papers that you've published, and you talk a lot about, creativity needs bad weather. Does that mean that us Sydney-siders are at a systematic disadvantage?
Yeah. But you're much better at sport.
Yeah, well.
So look, the answer is, know what you're good at. Yeah. No, and it is a kind of provocative thought. But actually, there is a huge amount of empirical evidence to show that, Nobel Prize winnings predominantly come from cold, slightly inhospitable climates. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, get outside and have some fun. Look, what are we doing in here? Have you looked out there?
Yeah.
It is amazing, but yeah. So I stand by that comment.
Excellent. Look, I'll get a bit more serious now.
Yeah.
Now, I know the word creativity just recently celebrated its 150th birthday.
Yeah.
In the written press, in the written text. And I thought it would be good for us to start there, just to understand what's your definition of creativity, just to help the crowd, and as we talk about creativity tonight, to understand how you apply it.
Well, I think that's a really, really good question, and I'm going to frame it and then answer your question. But I mean, I think what's interesting about today is that we are entering into what I will call a creative age. Already people talk about the information age, but actually I think we should define it as the creative age. It's an age where imagination becomes more important than almost anything else. And AI is going to be a part of that. And I'm sort of, I have concerns about it, but actually the upside of it is that it is going to be liberating. And I did a talk at Cannes last year, and it was called Giants Can't Dance. And it was basically that AI is liberating us all within terms of information, and that we can react faster than large organizations. So all of a sudden, that ability to create and do things is now within all of our powers. And if you look at the kind of development throughout the history of the world, kind of it's, gradually things are there to make things easier for us to do. So we are at an amazing point. I generally think we are entering a creative age. And I was saying to Tash, actually, I got everybody or some people to read a book, Tash, called Your Brain on Art. And it talks about how actually, written by a brilliant scientist, a brilliant neuroscientist, and another female from Google, two wonderful ladies. And the neuroscientist said, actually, our brains are wired to be creative. And not acknowledging that is bad for your health. And literally, they talk about your health. And she goes through all the things that it does. And in a sense, what she's actually saying is we're entering this new age of creativity. Businesses are entering this new age of creativity. The ability to imagine and do something better. I can't grab my iPhone out of my pocket, which I usually do. A product made from imagination. Yeah. Because all the technology was there, but somebody said, put it together like that. So imagination, creativity is the future. Now, what's interesting, and now to your question, so if this is important, and you accept it's important, and businesses are going to have to accept it's important, can you define it? Now, if I say dentistry, I think everybody would have a fairly accurate crack at what dentistry is, right? Even actually some creative people, when I say define creativity for me, they go, well, it's putting together a number of different constituent thoughts to make something else and to get you to look at something in a different way. And I go, that's really really interesting, but that's the process of creativity. What is the philosophical soul of creativity? Now, surely, if we are saying this is the future, then understanding it must be fundamentally important. Just like, if we understand health is important, well, then understanding how that works and how it works is fundamentally important. And we don't, which is one of the things that I find very, very bizarre. Because I just think, well, if this is so important, why are we understanding it much more? So, definition of creativity and why this is unbelievably important. First of all, we are all creative. That's the thing. I spend my life working with clients and people who would say, well, I'm not creative. And I'd say, no, we're all creative. It's just I'm earning my living by it. You're not. But we are all creative. Therefore, if that is the case, then actually creativity could be defined as an expression of self. Now, often when I do that, I look at people and is it really right? Is that right? And I say, okay, for the doubters, how many times have you seen a film director, a novelist, a painter, whatever, talking about their next piece of work? The phrase you will hear more than anything else is, what I wanted to say was this, an expression of self. And creativity is our power to express what we feel. That is actually creativity. Then how you do it then becomes the process of creativity. Am I a writer? Am I that? Am I just humming? Humming is kind of an essence of creativity. You're expressing your creativity. So why that is fundamentally important is then how interesting is self? Now, if you're dull, then the chances are your creativity is going to be pretty dull. But if you're open, you're aware, you're taking things in, you're curious, you listen to people, you have diverse conversations with all sorts of different people, all that feeds in to make you a much more interesting and therefore creative person. So creativity is an expression of self. Fundamentally important.
And my follow-up to that, my question I had, which is quite nicely timed, was in this creative age, and if the fact that everyone has the power of creativity, is it everyone's job to be creative in an organisation now, or is it just still the marketing department?
I don't think it's everybody's job to be. It's everybody's job to be aware of it, and to be aware of the importance of it. I mean, it's like, I'm trying to think of a quick example. Go back to fitness, to be aware that it's good to be fit, but I can't give you all the details of it, and I go to somebody who kind of specialises in it. I'm not trying to create a world where everybody, I always say, we're all artists, but some of us really shouldn't exhibit, all right? That's the kind of, and that's the problem with democracy, isn't it? Oh, fuck, now they're going to...
And iPhones.
So... But being aware of it is fundamentally important. And it's why I'm on this mission to try and get businesses to understand how important it is. And, it's really going well. But the thing where I failed is I want the CFO to take the course, for them to understand why it's important. Because then if they do, then the person controlling the purse strings might go, oh, God, this is very important. And that's what I'm trying, ultimately that's what my dream is. When I see that huge numbers of CFOs in companies have taken the course, then I'll feel, yes, we've done it.
That's a question in itself. So what right now do you think are the best ways or best methods to be able to sell both the risk and the reward of creativity to CFOs and to CEOs, the people that sit there number crunching?
Well, the answer is if they don't engage with it, they don't have a future. You're going to die. You're in the process of dying. Now, fine, you might say, I'll manage decline. Fine, you might go, it'll take 10 years and I'm retiring in 3 years, so I don't give a shit. That might be your answer. But if anybody has a kind of belief in growing something for the long term, creating something with a life to it, and that life creates more and more value, then surely engaging with creativity is fundamentally important. And we've got to take away this sense of kind of this dangerous word, creativity. You know, when I went to New York we opened BBH in New York in the beginning of '99, and I was there for 2.5 years. And a couple of things about being in America which struck me as odd. I mean,
this could be a long chat.
More things about today, but one, when I was in presentation, I used the word creative. You go, hey, ooh, you're going to do that edgy stuff, are you? You'd get, and you go, no, I'm going to do stuff that has empathy with people, that creates memorability, that has value to it, that is considered. And they didn't think of creativity like that. So that was one thing I learned. And the other thing I learned about America is, and if you come from Europe, kind of big isn't necessarily good. Whereas in America, big is great. You know, this is the country of the Big Mac, the big car, you know, big country, big... And so you have to learn those differences, but it was very interesting. Now I think it has slightly changed in America. I was talking to somebody about this the other day and said it's not quite the same now, but it has that lingering thing about it's this dangerous thing rather than it's an expression of who we are. And we put it into this box of kind of, don't understand that. Don't go into an art gallery because I'll see a painting I don't understand. That's fine. I sometimes listen to music I don't understand, but I go, it's okay. Just enjoy the fact that you're there. So it's this word which carries a loaded kind of meaning to it, which is unjustified because it's who we are.
I might have listened to a fair few podcasts you've done recently. There's another word that I heard used that is sometimes a great adjacent to it that sometimes can land, and that's innovation.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain?
Well, you know, the great thing in life is, and the thing because I spent so much time in advertising, I had to work out how to sell work because it was my job to go in as the creative person doing it, how to sell. And I realized very early on, you've got to find the door you go through. What's the door you're going to go through to get people to kind of listen to what you say? And so when I do my presentation in front of business leaders about creativity, and I can see them all going, you want to look at the way he's dressed, or, oh God, like. And I just go, I just want to ask everybody in this room, who believes in innovation? And of course, all the hands go up because no idiot's going to go, nah, don't believe in that, that's no. And so I say, that's terrific, but creativity is at the heart of innovation. The more you understand creativity, the better you are going to be at innovation. So that's the door you go through. And I think you've always got to find a door that you go through. And the other way, my tip, if any of you are in the creative world and you're selling work, the other thing, I've seen more great work die because the creative team selling it didn't understand how to sell. And the trick is always... it sounds cynical to say it's a trick. It isn't a trick. It's what you should do is you've got to use words that person you're selling to understands. And therefore, they will in turn realize you've understood their problem. You've got to make them realize you've understood their problem. Not, I've seen, why is this idea? It's really cool, and it's that, and if somebody else uses the word cool, it'll drive me mad. But they use all these words that a client thinks they're making it for themselves, not for me. The trick is to make, and I say I don't really like that word, the skill is to make them realize you're solving their problem. And then they might go, oh, that's interesting then. They really have listened, they've really listened to my problem, and they might have a solution to it. And you're halfway to selling it. But you've got to find the door within which you go through.
I heard you say one line, a language is the barrier to great communication. Is that right?
Yeah, I used to say that to all my... Because I was an art director.
Yeah.
Just to annoy them,
right?
I love that.
Yeah.
And I used to just I take these kind of counter views just to annoy the writers. Yeah. And I say, words are a barrier to communication. You know that, don't you? And they just look at me and go, what are you talking about? And I'd say, read some copy or something. I said, who's going to read this? The power of reduction. Yeah. And I used to talk to them about the power of reduction, the ability to take it down. And, too many words just gets in the way. Take it out. It's the hardest thing to do is write less, say more. There's a great, I'm sure you know it, letter from Pascal, the great French philosopher, who wrote the letter and said, "My apologies for this letter being so long. Had I more time, it would have been shorter." And I think that is so profound and simple, and But I used to just love annoying the writers.
We deal with a lot of editors, so I'm going to drop that one in at some point. Question I had, don't give it away, Danielle, don't tell anyone, by the way.
No, I won't do that.
Question I had was, obviously you've navigated an incredible amount of technological shifts throughout your career. And amidst all this current panic about automation and AI, what is the one thing about human behaviour, or two things, and marketing that hasn't changed in your career?
Yeah, I have a little phrase which is, principles remain, but practices change. And I think the great problem that we have is that everybody thinks all the principles have changed.
Yeah.
I'm told, attention spans have got shorter. I'm sure they always were short because, we fucking got a hunter mammoth over there and he's whittering on about something. I'm going to the mammoth and then... And, it's always we've always needed succinct, Shakespeare, to be or not to be.
Yeah.
That is the question. Blimey, that's profound, And so this idea that things have changed radically because of, 25 years of digital technology, it's just nonsense. You're talking about, however 250,000 years of human development. Has the brain really shrunk that much in the last 20 years? No, I don't think it has. I think what's happening is we're putting out so much that people go, I just can't be bothered, So we think their attention span has shortened. As far as I can see, and I always remember this came out about 20 years ago about that. And they said, attention spans are shortening, this is terrible, and then there was a great Danish crime thriller, I've forgotten what it was, it became quite famous, and the detective had a knitted jumper. And it was 20 episodes long with one murder. And I thought, and everybody was on the edge of their seat with it. And I thought, hold on, I thought you said attention spans are getting shorter. And you just get this constant put out mostly by technology companies, because that's what they're trying to get you to do. Remember what they're saying, who's selling you this? To say attention spans are getting shorter. They're getting shorter for the dross that you're putting out there. Do something really interesting, and people constantly watch. Game of Thrones, I seem to remember that was like, I don't know how many series and each one, and
eight series, probably what, 12 episodes,
whatever it was, and everybody was glued to the TV or wherever you're watching it. Breaking Bad, or another one. It's kind of, we just, I hear all this stuff, and you just go, oh God, another idiot coming out. And they're not. And what they're not understanding is why this is.
Yeah.
And I kind of we're just editing out stuff. So people think the answer is make it shorter. So make more dross. Not, I'm going to make something of real value. Oh, that's a good idea. Well, who had that idea? Oh, really? That's great. So we seem to be, I was saying this morning, I was chatting, we seem to be as an industry, the communications industry, going, we're making a worse product. All right? That's not my opinion. That is, all the data tells you that. And so what we think is the way to solve that problem is to make an even worse product. Now, I have not read a business book, I don't know if you have, I haven't read one, that said the way to succeed is to make a crap product. I don't know, it could be an interesting book to write, I suppose. But that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're making a worse product. And we think it's going to work. No, it's not. So, who's telling you this? And just challenge it. And the point about progress is we challenge the status quo anyway. That's how we move forward. Because everybody accepted that, and somebody go, no, I'm going to do that. Oh, hello, wait a minute, that's quite interesting. And the idea is to present it in a way which captures people's imagination, and that works.
Are there any themes in particular that you think have stood the test of time for what humans tap into?
Themes in what? In the communications?
From the principles perspective.
Well, I think storytelling.
Yep.
We seem to have forgotten that. I was speaking at a digital conference. This is now about 20 years ago. And I was on, and the bloke was on before me, and he was telling the audience, we don't need storytelling anymore. And that's all over. You don't have to do that. It's focus on that. Direct your communication to that person. And I'm about to go on. I'm thinking, how did this idiot even get on the stage? And why is it half the audience are nodding in agreement?
Yeah.
I mean, what complete twats? I mean, I couldn't believe it. I just think, why am I surrounded by these idiots? And they go on saying it. And then, of course, you know, out comes a book called Sapiens by Harari, who says the fundamental flip for humanity was we developed what he called fictive language, storytelling, and how that transformed us as a species. And you go, there's this digital idiot telling everybody that it's all over, you don't have to do it anymore, not realizing that's how we absorb information, how we pass on information, how we do it, and it's crucial to us. But and so you'll find in life, you just get these people all the time. And because I constantly say, I am so old, I've heard it so many times that, you know, here's another one. I've had all those things about research, about sweaty palms and eyeball movement, and, you know, instead of just, why don't we make something better? You know, there's a concept. Anyway, sorry, I went there a bit. Sorry about that. Anyway, what was the question, Lee?
Oh no, I think you've answered it. Up. Thank you. The power of storytelling, basically, is one of the core thematic that stood the test of time.
It is how we communicate, how we absorb information, how we remember things, and you know, humour is the other thing we seem to have lost. We seem to have lost the art of making people laugh, which is rather good, actually. It's good for your health too.
Back on the technology companies and the big platforms that are coming, we've seen a pretty rapidly fragmenting media landscape over a number of years now, probably even decades. What impact do you think that has on things such as social cohesion?
Well, I think, you know, the great thing about a brand is that it actually, in many ways, one of its functions is to bring people together.
Yeah.
Is kind of embrace you, and kind of we can talk about it and share it, and so the answer in advertising is to make your communication a part of culture. That's what you want to do. So we share those things and they become important in our life. And the fragmenting media landscape means, of course, that's slightly harder to do, and people aren't accepting that challenge to try and do that. But I think that is where the solution lies. Its solution lies for brands in being able to bring people together and have a shared experience. Even if you don't buy that brand, or if you're not going to be part of that brand, it doesn't matter. You know, there's a lovely line, I wish I'd written it, and it says, a brand is made not just by the people who buy it, but also by the people who know about it. And that is so profound, so simple, so important. And you know, it's how we share. Because we share culture, we share experiences, we share community, we share... you know, a brand to become a part of that is hugely, hugely valuable. That is not going to happen if you spend your life narrowcasting as opposed to broadcasting, however you want to define broadcast. So that's a crucial part of making a brand a part of culture, and is a benefit to society because we then share it. We bond over it, and you know, like we bond over football teams or cricket or sport.
I was just about to ask that. So how important are cultural touch points, like shared cultural touch points, to give that brand that presence?
Crucial, but the brand can make itself so. You know, it can make itself a part of a culture by creating work that, you know, makes people smile and laugh and has a resonance, and it comes from the heart and soul of that brand. I mean, I always use kind of Marmite as an example of that. You have Vegemite here, we have Marmite. But, you know, they just did the whole love-hate campaign, and they've made the word Marmite now a way you describe people. They're a bit Marmite, you know. And isn't that brilliant? That's a brilliant... It's a bloody yeast spread, for God's sake, you know. Christ. And, you know, if you can make that kind of relevant, you know, and somebody once said to me, yeah, but our product is a bit boring. And I said, you know, who gives a crap toilet paper? And, you know, if you can make toilet paper really interesting, I mean, come on, you know, all know what we do with it, and they make that interesting. Surely anything else, you know, you can make it happen. But I think it's really important because we need to congregate around things. We need to share things, and community again, going back to what Harari says in *Sapiens*, which is a great book, that sense of community is fundamentally important to how we develop and how culture and society progresses.
How important is common knowledge in that, in creating that?
Well, I think, yeah, common knowledge and shared experience are all part of it. I mean, we are in a world today where, people talk about fake news and not accepting truths, and, it's a real worry that. And, and I always, there's a great art historian, art critic, Boris Groys, and he talks about art, and he talks about the truth of art. And basically what he says, you can look him up, Boris Groys, Groys, and it's the truth of art. But basically what he says, if art doesn't contain a truth, then the power moves from the creator to the observer. In other words, art loses power. And I think once you move from truth, you begin to lose power, because then it all disintegrates, it all falls apart. And I think, in a way, we're all trying to attain power in some shape or form. Power to persuade, power to drive your own life, power to, and I don't mean power in a negative way, I mean power in a positive way. We're all seeking power. Power comes, and what he's saying is, with art, power comes from truth. That's at the core and foundation of art. And I think in society we need that, and that's a huge concern. If you look at the history of advertising, the great advertising campaigns told the truth. The answer was just make it interesting.
Yeah.
Volkswagen is ugly, but it works. It was and it's disarming. The answer is do it in a way which is interesting. Like Marmite, love it or hate it. They just said it was true. People say yes.
Actually, that's a good question. What are some of your all-time favourite campaigns? Campaigns that you've either worked on or things that you've admired and thought, wow, they've nailed it?
Well, there are so many, actually. It's kind of, that became seminal that I respect. I mean, I was, when I was at design school, I went from art school to design school, and I was shown the work of Dorden Birnbeck in the 60s. And it was, for me, like a light bulb going on. It was a sort of like, my God, here's work that's funny, witty, involving, inclusive, has an integrity to it, is telling the truth. That's what I want to do. And it had ideas at its core. And for me, that was great. So that, those campaigns forevermore became part of what drove me. And I was a great admirer of a fantastic writer called Mary Wells. Mary Wells was one of the great creative writers, and a lot of people don't know who she is. They talk about, women can't make it in advertising. Bollocks. She was like 1965, and she was writing some of the brilliant work. She did Braniff, the airline, and she painted the airlines. First thing she did, got all the airlines painted a different colour. And, it was the end of the plane. And she was, we talk about, through the line is a new thing. Oh, God, here we go. Something else that I think was invented yesterday, and you go look at her work. It's just absolutely fantastic. People like that were very inspirational. But I think, I tend to like work rather than put people on pedestals, because you get a bit disappointed with that. So ideas for me are the thing that I've always loved an idea. And that's what's great about a really good advertising agency, because the phrase there you'll hear more than anything walking around the agency is people, so what's the idea? And it's that lovely thing of, this is the idea, and I love that. And an idea can change the world. And it's the most democratic thing that you can do. Anybody can do it at any time, don't need permission, don't need special equipment, don't need anything. You can have an idea. Isn't that liberating, I think? And that idea could change the world. Might not. Might be, we'll have pizza tonight as opposed to pasta. That is an idea, but it's not going to change the world. But, it is kind of, we should celebrate that. And that's what we have. We were gifted it, your expression of self, idea.
So there is the sentiment, and I don't think you'd have to go too far, of probably fear. I think I was talking to Terry about this before, particularly with AI coming to replace creative jobs, but also a whole range of different jobs, right? But I understand you're a bit of an optimist for the creative industry
Yeah.
and their importance of humans continuing to, to power it.
But I always have to counter this by saying I'm sort of cursed as an optimist, all right? As Archbishop Tutu said, is much better. He said, I'm a prisoner of optimism, which I thought was very smart, that. But I do think, yes, there are problems with AI. Of course there are. You know, there are problems with electricity. If you put your finger in the plug, you die, you know. I mean, you know, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know? AI, you know, there are downsides to AI.
Yeah.
Of course there are. The whole issue of copyright, which has got to be resolved.
Yeah.
But I think actually, you've got to remember, you know, I always say two things. It goes back to my talk at Cannes about Giants Can't Dance. It is democratizing opportunity. Now, surely that's got to be good, isn't it?
Yep.
Democratizing opportunity, I like that. And the other thing I say about it is that it's not a tool. You collaborate with it.
Yeah.
And that's unique. You know, you collaborate with it and you drive it. But it doesn't have imagination. It will reformulate stuff and it will give you stuff and that, but you'll go, that's interesting, but what if we now took it to here? So actually, I think that what's going to happen with AI, it's going to democratize opportunity. It's those people who understand how to use it and how you can apply it are going to be the ones that inherit the future. And I think this is actually, for all those marketing people, this is a moment in time. It ain't going to be repeated. It's a moment in time for you to go to your boards and say, AI is going to change the way we relate to our audience. I never use the word consumer, by the way. It's a loathsome word. And we have to understand it, and we have to understand how it's going to work. We in marketing know that. And we understand how to harness it for the future. And I think you've got a real opportunity here to actually take control of that, because it's democratized. It's not owned by any one person. And I think the last time this happened was the development of commercial television, which completely transformed marketing, transformed it. It's hard for us to realize what it was like before commercial television, when I could be in your living room and talk to you as a brand. You know, normally it was outside, you know, I had to be out, or a newspaper that you brought in. But suddenly, yeah, there was radio, but television was transformative. And it's those brands, those marketing people who understood how to galvanize that, how to utilize that, were the ones that inherited the future. And I think you've got this moment in time, and to say, this is how it's going to work. And the landscape of how media works is going to change. With agentic AI, which will be your assistant, everybody will have their own personal assistant, will do all the searches. Forget search. It's gone. Why am I going to go search? I've got that person to do that. You know, they do that for me. So websites, gone. Why would I go to a website? You know, I've got too many other things to do. It's too boring, you know, to go to some website and go to, you know, and what, so, you know, there is a kind of way of looking at it, which is all the dreary, dull stuff it will do, and then advertising then will say, well, how do I, or brands will have to say, well, how do I talk to you emotionally, so that you go, yes, I want to fly Qantas versus Emirates or whatever it might be. It will have to do what I would call old-fashioned BBH-style advertising, which was brand, which contained a message, which contained a fact in some shape or form. That agentic will go out and get that. Oh, that's an interesting fact, because it can only do facts. And the emotional bit you'll pick up, and you'll go, I really want to fly Qantas versus Emirates, or whatever it might be. So there's a whole new landscape of how it's going to work appearing. Just as when television advertising occurred, there was a completely new way of marketing to your audience. And I think this moment is happening in time. And am I absolutely certain right about that, about the way it is? Not absolutely sure, but it's for you to investigate. But it is going to change it. The guarantee I make, the prediction I make is it is going to change it. The way it is at the moment is going to change. And if you're at the leading edge of that, you go to your board and you say, I understand it. This is what's going to happen. Jobs are going to go. Your jobs are probably going to go. All right? There's a good chance your jobs are going to go. But this is how you can secure your future. And all of a sudden, you'll be in
In the safe.
You'll be at the safe. I do remember actually when we opened BBH in New York. It was 99. It was a .com boom. You know, you couldn't say anything without saying .com in the first 3 seconds of a conversation. And anyway, we realised that we needed a digital partner. Because, you know, we were a classic agency. We hadn't developed a digital partner in the US. We needed one. And we started working with really good. It was called Oven Digital, no longer exists. And the guy who founded it was really, really good. And we said, well, look, we're going to partner with you. You'll be our digital partner. Now, we're doing a number of presentations. So join us, and you'll see how we work. And, you know. And anyway, after about the third presentation, he came out, and he said, oh my God. He said, you guys are really, really good. I'm learning so much stuff. It's just fantastic. And then he said, but do you know what's interesting? You're lucky if you can get to the marketing director. I can get to the chairman. Why? Because the chairman's scared of what's going to happen with digital. The chairman will be scared of what's going to happen with AI. Yeah. You could be the people going, I'll tell you. And I'll keep you informed. So that's power. And I think that moment is here. The gap will close, somebody will fill it, because they do, but you could be the ones that do it, because it's fundamentally important. Really is. And it's a moment in time. It's that, you know, I'm calling it that television moment.
Yeah. Look, I only had one more question on my list, but I think you might have just answered it, but I'll ask it anyway, just in case
go for it, Lee.
There's another colour. If tomorrow was your first day of your career, and you're walking into a business and a marketing team, what would be your priority?
Well, the first thing, people often, that's a good question, but if actually I was coming into the industry or thinking about my future now, I would first of all become a creator. Yep. I'd develop my own audience. I'd do my funny, silly drawings, and I'd develop an audience, and in that way, I would have power. So then I could go into an agency and said, look, I might like to work with you. I've already got, 30,000 people following me. Yep. That gives me power. That's what I would do. And that's the opportunity you've got now. Yep. If you're a creative person and you're going into it, you can do that. That's what I would do. Now, my power before was my portfolio, and they either bought it or didn't. And, the gatekeepers are going. Yeah. Yep. That's what you've got to remember. And I came from an era when there were lots of gatekeepers. Now I can talk directly to and develop an audience. But remember what I said, we're all artists, but some of us shouldn't exhibit.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it to the floor now and see if there's any questions from our big table. Sure there'll be plenty.
Lady there. Yeah, good for you. Now, normally, and I'm really going to upset you here, normally what I do is, when you do that, there's usually a moment when nothing happens. Now, because I haven't got any cash on me, when that hand goes up, I instantly give that person $50 or whatever it might be that says, it pays to be first. But sadly, I don't have any cash, so you ain't going to get it.
Pay ID?
Yeah.
Pay ID?
Thanks, John. You can buy me lunch at Sheiky's
next
time
lovely,
I'm in
but
London.
I'm flying tomorrow at 4 o'clock, so you better hurry up.
No, Sheiky's in London when I'm over there.
Right,
yeah, there you go. Yeah, with the pounds.
We can do better than Sheiky's in London now.
Okay, fine. I want to ask you actually about my favourite BBH campaign. So, obviously there are many that had great commercial outcomes and really, really beautiful creative accolades. But my favourite actually was for Unilever and Persil, and Dirt is Good.
Dirt is good, yeah.
And, this is a category which was always about whiter is white, and every single piece of research was going to tell you never mention the word dirt. And I'm just super keen, I think you were still there at the time, I'm just sort of super keen on, one, how you sold that in, and, it changed the whole freaking category.
Yeah, it was the truth, in the sense of it was a way of looking, that kids get dirty. When they're getting dirty, they're playing. and they're having fun and they're growing and developing. So it was a counterintuitive campaign that said, accept the world as it is, and we can help solve it. When the kids are all dirty, then we can get their clothes clean. So it was a very simple idea, and actually they were very good at buying that, which was rather wonderful. But it was an example of kind of accept a fundamental truth, and it then gave the campaign real power. So very successful in that way.
Give me the $50.
We'll
Give you my email address.
Email you later. Yeah, okay. William's got the money. I got. Yes, lady here.
Not a campaign, but what is the thing that you are most proud of? Like, you've got such a remarkable legacy, but what is the one thing? When it comes down to reflecting, what is the thing that you are most proud of?
What's the thing I'm most proud of? It changes week by week, actually, depending what mood I'm in. But it's a really interesting question. I think we did do a campaign there was a very interesting, very small company called Derwent Valley Snacks, and they made bar snacks, tortilla chips, Californian corn chips, and things like that. And they were given a grant to open in a place called, right up in the northeast, which was the dreariest place in the world, in a place called Consett, County Durham. And everybody went, oh, God almighty. And anyway, so we were doing this campaign for about exotic snacks and the Californian corn chips and Punjab puri and all those things. The tendency was to go, we've gone to India, we've gone, and we thought, no, because we'll have to put a little thing on the screen said made in the UK. So we thought, no, we won't do that. We'll just tell them we're made in Medhamsley Road, Consett, County Durham. And we did the whole campaign around the fact that these exotic snacks come from Medhamsley Road, Consett, County Durham. And you can go online and look at it. And we did, we were very funny. And my point about that was, this was a campaign, it became very famous, lots of awards. They eventually sold the company to, I can't remember was it Northern? I can't remember. Anyway, the company had to keep the factory open to keep the brand going. So I saved those people's jobs. That was the campaign I was most proud of. Now, and that you can look it up. It was Derwent Valley Foods. Phileas Fogg it was called, Around the World in 8. And if you look up Jean Basteau, it got a gold at Cannes, and about Mignon Morceau. It's very funny. French didn't like it, actually, because they thought we were taking the piss out of the French. No, it was just funny, guys. Come on. But it was great. In a way, that was a great campaign. But, some of the questions you get asked is another way of looking at this. Is people often say to me, well, what brand would you like to have worked on? And I go, well, the brand, they all expect you to say Nike or, whatever, Apple or something like that. And I go, no, the brand I'd like to work on is a brand that wanted to change the way people thought or felt. So if a manufacturer of nuts and bolts came into the agency and said, look, I'd love to market nuts and bolts. They aren't very interesting, but actually without nuts and bolts, the world falls apart. That's the brand I'd love to work on. And I think that's, but Derwent Valley, Phileas Fogg, was the campaign that kept the factory open.
I'm going to throw one in, because I know we've got a special guest here tonight, that I know when I was doing my background research on you, I was certainly captivated by this character. Would you like to introduce this fella?
Yeah, now this is Flat Eric.
Yeah. Would you like to give everyone the story of this?
I can do it. Yeah. I don't normally take him with me.
This is brilliant.
Because actually I was just worried that he was mentioned in the Epstein files. So I thought, he's blown it. Was he on that jet? This is Flat Eric. Hello. He doesn't say much. But this is a great example. This is a Levi's campaign we did.
He's a bit of a badass.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And it was, we'd done this campaign, all these, about 25 of these supposedly seminal commercials, starting with Laundrette. And the Levi's client said, look, we think we've got a bit of research, and this is about 99, that says, it's now about relationships, and we think the next Levi's campaign could be about that, rather than the single hero, it's about relationships. And I go, what?
So you went from Brad Pitt.
Yeah, from Brad Pitt to Flat Eric.
Okay.
And I go, oh, Jesus, they've read some piece of research that said that. Some research twat has got something out and they've bought it. Since the beginning of time, we've loved heroes, What are kind of religions based on? Committees, bloke called Jesus, or, Anyway, so I thought, oh, God, no. They said, John, no, I think we ought to do it. So I said, okay, all right. And so we started developing work around thinking about, people, relationships. And we weren't getting very far. And I was shown this work by a French director, Mr. Wiseau. He developed a little fluffy yellow puppet called Mr. Wiseau. And I was shown this by one of our producers, who actually I ended up marrying, actually, so it was a very good move on my part. And she showed it to me, and I thought, that's really interesting. I really quite like that. Anyway, it parked it in the back of my brain. Along comes this thing about relationships. And I think we're not making any progress. So I thought, I know what we should do here. What we should do is we should take Kerouac's book, On the Road, basically about two guys on the road. But one of them is a fluffy yellow puppet. So I sort of think now I've got to present this to Levi's. So, all right, okay, and this is where they've used a Brad Pitt and they've had heroes and all that. Yeah. And I go, I go to Brussels, that's where they're headquartered, and I go, hey, you're right, Flat, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. And I go and I sort of say, I've got it, the solution to the problem, and there's a big spiel about that. And it's basically, the idea is based on Kerouac's On the Road. And they all go, oh, great. Oh, we love this. Yeah, this is really good. Oh, yeah. Because they could see it, And I sell it and I talk about the idea and what would happen and da-da-da-da. And they say, this is fantastic, John. We really, really love this. And I said, there's just one thing I haven't told you. What's that? Well, I said, one of them's Flat Eric is a yellow fluffy puppet. And they went, what? I said, no, it's a yellow fluffy puppet. It's this, the relationship is this guy and a yellow flat called Flat Eric. And they said, John, you're being stupid, go. Right. So we were kicked out, and I had to go back 3 times to get them to sell it. And a wonderful guy, Larry Ruff, and I'm going to name check him, who was the client, said to me, John, you really believe in this, don't you? And I said, yes, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. We'll do it. Yeah. And I'm thinking inside, Jesus, this better bloody work, Maybe this is the end of my career. And anyway, that was and we launched him, Flat Eric. And my only disappointment was that I wanted them to buy the back covers of like Vogue and all those style magazines and just have Flat Eric on it instead of, Armani and some, amazing model, just Flat Eric. It would have been great, wouldn't it? The back cover of Vogue. And that's a kind of an example of how media adds to your idea. But anyway, there he is, and he's still there. We're bringing him back. You're right, Flat, you're okay. He's not in the Epstein files, so it's all right.
In the agentic world, does he have his own persona yet?
We should think about that, shouldn't we? I think I was thinking of doing a book called The Thoughts of Flat Eric.
Yeah, I feel like there's something there.
It could be
like
good.
Like a daily guru check in to see how you can live your life.
Yeah, he is a guru. Anyway, but there you are. Yeah. Put him away now. There you go. Thanks, Willem. Catch him. Lovely.
After the serious content, has anyone got a hard-hitting question?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, Terry. Oh, this is when.
I don't need a mic.
Yeah, no, go on, shout.
John,
we're recording,
we all
so.
talk about the amazing work and the brilliant work. We all talk about the amazing work and brilliant work, but a lot of the work is pretty ordinary. A really high percentage of the work that we see on the various channels is ordinary. Why is that? Is it agency? Is it marketer? Why is there so much mediocre work around?
Well, I think that there's a sort of kind way of looking at that, which is actually, in reality, you might argue 90% of creative work is mostly rubbish, isn't it? You know, it's just that we don't have it thrust upon us. How many great films are there? How many great books are there? How many, you know? So you could argue that, you know, 90% of most creative output is not very good. All right, and we are just talking about the 10%. I think why this is a concern for our industry is that we impose our thinking upon people. Therefore, I think there is a greater onus on us to make it better. And I think that's why we should be doing it. Now, why that is, well, I think, you know, we've gone narrowcast. People don't value broadcast anymore. They don't want to spend money on it. They don't think it's worth it. So it's become a kind of an orphan child. And, you know, you don't, if you don't value something, you don't take it seriously, you don't spend correctly behind it and care for it and give it the attention it deserves. And I think kind of, you know, the development of digital technology has done that to us. And it was interesting, actually, because it's about 10 years ago, The Economist asked me to do a talk on creativity and technology. And the talk, I titled the talk, "Can You Name Gutenberg's Second Book?" And the thesis of my talk was that actually when amazing bits of technology occur, creative people don't know what to do with it. You know, because you go, what do I do with this? You know. And if you think about Gutenberg, he printed the Bible. You know, and you go, well, hold on, Guti, that's been around for 1,000 years. What's your next idea? We didn't have one. Actually, there's a reason for that, but it made a good title of a talk. But I think it proved that actually when amazing bits of technology occur, it's very difficult for creative people to know how to handle it. So the Lumiere brothers invent the moving camera and don't know what to do with it. Don't realize they've invented Hollywood. And they actually gave up on it, went back to taking very bad photographs. Didn't know what to do with it. You know, Les Paul is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not because he created rock and roll, but in about 1943 or 44, he developed the guitar. But it took another 10 or 15 years before, you know, Chuck Berry went Sweet Little 16, and wow. So there's this lag between the technology and understanding what to do with it. Because so much creative work is about subverting the kind of medium that it's in. Well, if the medium is completely new, what are you subverting? So I think there's this kind of problem with it. And I think that's why today we have this, how do we subvert this media? How do we, you know, and the danger is also, but the problem that we have is people are just not engaging with it. So the value of it is going down and going down and going down. And we've got to realize, you know, digital media is actually a devalued kind of medium. And why would you put your message into a devalued medium? You know, it's like, why would you drink water from a river that's polluted? Well, you wouldn't, would you? You know, I wouldn't. But, you know, the digital world, the social world is increasingly polluted. And so we're going to find it's not a place where a brand should be. So hopefully we're coming, I'm an optimist, as you know, that we're coming, I've been saying this for 5 years, mind you, that we are coming out of it. And I think that's it. But I think that's partly why it is. And I think there's a fear in people, you know, don't put your head above the parapet, which is rather bizarre, but that's what you want a brand to do, stand for something. You know, people are afraid of standing for something. We've lost the art of making people laugh. You know, laugh at yourself, and then people aren't going to be offended. You know, in most of our ads, we laughed. We did things where we laughed at ourselves. We you know, as a brand, you know, Levi's, we used to do that. You know, make it. There was always a little joke in the end of it. If you look at all the great Levi's, there's a little joke at the end of it. And it was you laughing at yourself. And then people can't take offense with that. And it's harder for them to be offended when you're trying to make people laugh. But, you know, when you take positions on social issues, I think it's very, very dangerous. And we've seen, You know, Pepsi, we all know that story about them coming completely unstuck when they tried to co-opt the Me Too movement. And, you know, they didn't accept they're a sort of, you know, a bloody fizzy drink that rots your teeth, you know, and they should have just tried to sort that out rather than tell people how to live, you know. But I think that it's a big question, and I think there are many, many reasons for it.
I think we're... Oh, sorry.
One more there, yes.
One more.
Yeah,
I don't think
gentleman
we've got
there,
time
yes.
for one more. Yep.
We
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Go on, go for it. One more.
Thank you. Well, as an expat Brit, thank you for bringing the word twat back into my lexicon.
Yeah.
I'll be using that again a bit more.
Complete twat.
I haven't heard it for a while.
Add to it now.
I guess thinking about BBH, outside of it being an ad agency and the work and the brilliant campaigns, you were a founder with a team of, you know, within a team of a 3 founding team who turned a business into a small business, into a big business that ultimately was worth enough money that publicists would come and buy it off you. So what did you, I'm interested in your role as a kind of an entrepreneur and a leader. What did you learn in that course of running and growing a business, and what might you have done differently if you had your time again?
Yeah, really good question there. I mean, I think what would I have done differently is started it sooner. But then again, you know, timing's really important, and I actually think in the end we got our timing absolutely right. I have that joke about, you know, that you ever done that? What are you going to have on your tombstone? Right, I'm going to have timing's everything in life. I just ran out of it, you know. So timing's really important. I think what sort of made it really work was that we loved the work. We started it because we wanted to do better work, and I think that sustained us really. And we you know, we always used to say all roads lead to the work, and you know, you could feel it at BBH. If everybody was a bit down, as soon as a great piece of work came out, everybody was like, "You've got to see it. That's great, fantastic." And so it was a way of, and I realised that what brands need to do, and I used to sort of sit in meetings as the creative person. I'd go in and sell the work, and you'd have the clients there and account people. There'd be a big meeting, and I'd want to leave at that point. You know, say, fine, I've done my bit. I'm out. You know, they're going to talk about stuff which, you know, okay. But I used to have to stay in the meeting because it look interested too. That was the really hard thing. And I'm thinking about something else, and I know I've got to look interested in their problem. And that's your problem. You sort that out. And they used to sort of, you know, and we're not doing very well in the Northeast or something like that, or, you know, and then they'd be talking about on-pack promotion and maybe we should pricing policy, distribution. And I'd be sitting there going, why the fuck don't you make a better product? and you know, nobody ever thought about making a better product? That's a good idea. Hey, oh, wait a minute, hold on. So that was the thing that, and I realised our product was our work, and we just were absolutely laser-like on it. And therefore, we never had any politics at BBH, because nobody ever tried that, because it was all about the work. And nobody was interested in that conversation. So we never had problems like that you get in agencies where people are vying for, you know, it wasn't, you know, nobody cared. You know, if you're an account director, what's your account doing? You know, what great ads are coming out? What have you done? What are you doing there? And everybody was, so it made it a great place, in a way, a great place to work. It didn't work for some people, but, you know, they found out and they went. So that was the thing that I learned more than anything. And I think an obsession with the quality of the product you make is fundamentally important. And to then have fun as well. That was fundamentally important. Thank you.
That's a beautiful summary of basically everything we've discussed. Have fun and let the quality of work speak for itself.
Great, isn't it? That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sir John. That was fantastic.
Thanks.
I called you Sir John again. There we go.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, mate.
Really great. Really great.
I think without further ado, we'll get stuck into dinner. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for being such a great audience.
Yeah,
Hope you enjoyed First Food for Thought.